Most seniors who discover a Medicare overcharge do one of two things. They call the provider and get nowhere, or they give up and pay the bill. What almost nobody does is use the formal complaint and appeal system that Medicare built specifically for this purpose. A system with deadlines, legal obligations on the other side, and multiple escalation paths that most people have never heard of. Here is what I want to make clear before anything else. There is a right form for every situation, and using the wrong form is one of the most common reasons people go through the effort of complaining and get nothing back. Filing the right complaint in the right place is not bureaucratic fine print. It is the difference between your overcharge being reviewed by someone with the authority to order a refund and your complaint sitting in a queue that was never designed to produce one. I'm going to walk you through the full landscape, which complaint goes where, what each process can actually do for you, when the OIG complaint is the right tool, when it is the wrong one, and what the correct sequence is when you discover that Medicare was billed for something you were overcharged for or should not have been charged for at all. Before we get into it, I want to hear from you. Have you ever tried to dispute a Medicare charge and felt like you could not figure out who was actually supposed to handle it? Drop it in the comments. The number of people who try to get this resolved and hit a dead end at the first call is significant, and almost always it is because they reached the wrong office. And before anything else, everything I share here is educational, not personalized legal advice. For help navigating your specific situation, contact your SHIP office, which is free in every state and exists precisely for this. With that said, let us get into it. My name is Walter Barron. I am a state bar licensed estate attorney, and for more than 15 years, I have worked with families on Medicare billing disputes, overcharge recoveries, and the complaint processes nobody explains until after the deadline has passed. Let us get into it. The Medicare complaint and appeal system has 4 distinct channels. Each one is designed for a different type of problem, and each one has a different level of authority to produce a result. Confusing them does not just delay the resolution, it can cost you the right to appeal entirely, because most of these processes have strict deadlines that run from specific triggering events, and those deadlines do not pause while you figure out which office to call. The first channel is the Medicare appeal. This is the process you use when Medicare has made a coverage decision, a determination about whether a specific service, item, or claim is covered, and you disagree with that decision. An appeal is not the same as a complaint about a billing error. It is a formal challenge to a coverage determination. Under Original Medicare, there are 5 levels of appeal. You start with a redetermination request filed with your Medicare Administrative Contractor, the MAC, which has 45 days to respond for non-urgent matters and 60 days for Part A claims. If the MAC rules against you, you escalate to a reconsideration by a qualified independent contractor. If that also goes against you, you can request a hearing before an administrative law judge, provided your claim meets the minimum amount of $200. Above that come the Medicare Appeals Council, and, for cases meeting $1,960 in 2026, Federal District Court. At each level, the deadline to move to the next step is typically 60 days from the date on the decision notice. Missing that deadline does not mean you can try again. It means the appeal right at that level is permanently forfeited. Appeals are specifically for situations where Medicare or your plan said no to something, denied a claim, denied a service, said a hospitalization was not covered, said a specific drug is not on the formulary. If you received a denial notice and you believe the denial was wrong, the appeal process is where you go. It is worth noting that the OIG's own published data shows that when Medicare Advantage enrollees appeal skilled nursing facility denials, plans reverse those denials 95% of the time. The appeal works. What does not work is not filing it. The second channel is the grievance. This is the process you use when you have a complaint that is not about a specific coverage decision, when your plan failed to follow its own procedures, when a provider billed you improperly, when you were charged a cost-sharing amount you should not owe, or when your plan did not respond to your appeal within the required time frame. A grievance is filed with your plan's Grievance and Appeals Department, typically within 60 days of the event that triggered the complaint. Your plan is required to investigate and respond within 30 days, or within 24 hours if the situation is urgent. The response must be in writing if you submitted the grievance in writing. Grievances are where you go for billing errors, improper charges, and situations where the system behaved in a way it was not supposed to. Here is a distinction that trips people up constantly. An appeal can potentially reverse a denial and require the plan to cover something. A grievance cannot. A grievance is a formal complaint about how you were treated. It can trigger corrective action, it can result in a refund of an improper charge, but it cannot overturn a specific coverage denial. If your situation involves both a billing error and a coverage dispute, you may need to file both, and you need to file them in parallel because they have separate deadlines. The third channel is the Medicare complaint system at 1-800-MEDICARE and Medicare.gov. This is the channel you use when your plan or provider has not responded to a grievance within the required timeframe, or when you want Medicare itself to be aware of a systemic problem with a plan or provider. Filing a complaint here puts your concern into Medicare's formal tracking system and can trigger outreach from Medicare to the plan or provider on your behalf. The Medicare Beneficiary Ombudsman, which is accessible through 1-800-MEDICARE, handles Medicare-related complaints and information requests, and can escalate concerns that are not being resolved through standard channels. The Ombudsman was established specifically to help people whose concerns have fallen through the cracks of the standard appeal and grievance process. The fourth channel is the OIG Hotline. This is the channel most people reach for first, and the one that is least useful for recovering an individual overcharge. The OIG's own published guidance says explicitly, and I am quoting from oig.hhs.gov directly, "If your purpose in filing a complaint is to gain some type of relief, such as obtaining a refund from a Medicare participating provider, you should pursue other administrative or judicial remedies." The OIG rarely intervenes in personal or civil grievances. What the OIG hotline handles well is reports of fraud, waste, and abuse at a systemic level. Providers submitting false claims, kickback schemes, identity theft involving Medicare beneficiaries, abuse and neglect in nursing homes. The OIG investigates these patterns, pursues enforcement actions, and recovers money for the Medicare program as a whole. It is not a refund mechanism for individual billing errors. Reaching for it first, without exhausting the appeal and grievance process, sends your complaint to a system that is not positioned to give you back your money. Now, let me be specific about which tool to use for each type of situation you might be in, because this is where most of the confusion lives and where most people lose time they do not have. If you paid a deductible or co-insurance for a service and Medicare later adjusted or canceled the claim, meaning the amount Medicare determined you owed changed after you already paid, the correct first step is to contact the provider's billing department directly, in writing, and request a refund. Federal regulations require providers who participate in Medicare to return credit balances to patients when claims are adjusted downward. Put the refund request in writing, reference the claim date and the adjusted amount, and ask for the refund within 30 days. If the provider does not respond or tells you there is no credit balance when your Medicare summary notice suggests there is one, file a grievance with your plan and simultaneously file a complaint at Medicare.gov referencing OIG Work Plan Project OAS-26-06-055. The active federal audit of whether CMS is tracking these refunds. That specific project number signals to Medicare that your complaint is tied to a documented and currently active federal enforcement priority, which changes how it is processed. If you were billed separately by a provider for services delivered during a Medicare Part A skilled nursing facility stay, a separate invoice from a physical therapist's private practice, a lab company, a transportation service, any provider that was not the facility itself, the first step is to call that provider and ask directly whether the service falls within the S&F consolidated billing package. If it does, and the provider does not issue a refund after that conversation, file a written grievance with your plan and file a separate complaint with your Medicare administrative contractor. The MAC is the regional entity that processes your Part A claims. The contact information for your MAC is available at medicare.gov. After exhausting the MAC process without resolution, the OIG Hotline becomes an appropriate next step, because at that point, you are no longer seeking personal relief on an individual claim. You are reporting a pattern of systemic, consolidated billing violations, which is exactly what the OIG Hotline is designed to investigate. If you paid a copay, deductible, or coinsurance while enrolled in the Qualified Medicare Beneficiary Program, the MSP level that legally prohibits any Medicare provider from charging you any cost sharing, the fastest first step is to call 1-800-MEDICARE and tell them you are a QMB enrollee who was charged Medicare cost sharing. Medicare can confirm your QMB status directly with the provider during that call and formally request that the provider stop billing and refund the amount collected. CMS has published guidance requiring providers to issue refunds for improper QMB charges, and a direct confirmation from Medicare carries significant weight with a provider's billing department. If the billing continues after that call, or if the provider refuses to refund what was collected, file a complaint with both Medicare.gov and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau at consumerfinance.gov. The CFPB and CMS issued a joint enforcement statement in October 2024, confirming that QMB billing violations may also constitute violations of the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, which extends your remedies beyond Medicare into federal consumer protection law. If your Medicare Advantage plan denied a claim that you believe should have been covered, a skilled nursing admission, a post-acute care service, a prior authorization request, file an appeal, not a grievance. The distinction is not semantic. Appeals can escalate all the way to an administrative law judge and beyond. Grievances stay within the plan's internal review process and cannot reverse a specific coverage denial. The OIG's published data from June 2026 shows that when seniors appeal Medicare Advantage skilled nursing facility denials, plans reverse those denials 95% of the time. That reversal rate is the highest confirmation possible that the appeal process works. What does not work is not filing it. The window to file the first level of appeal is 60 days from the date on the denial notice, not 60 days from when you notice the bill, and not 60 days from when you finally had time to deal with it. 60 days from the date on the notice. Mark that date the moment the notice arrives. Now, let me tell you the one situation where the OIG complaint form is genuinely the right tool, because there is one, and it is important. When a provider is submitting fraudulent claims to Medicare, not billing errors, but intentional patterns of false billing, the OIG hotline at 1-800-HHSTIPS and the online complaint form at oig.hhs.gov/fraud/report-fraud are exactly where that should go. The OIG investigates patterns of fraud at the provider level, and its data analytics team uses tips from patients and family members to identify which providers to audit. The 2025 National Healthcare Fraud Takedown, the largest in DOJ history, with $14.6 billion in alleged losses and 96 licensed medical professionals charged, was built in part on tips, data, and complaints from patients and family members who noticed something wrong. If you observed a pattern, a provider billing for services that were not delivered, equipment that was shipped without a real prescription, a telehealth call that was brief and led to a large shipment, a nursing home billing for therapy sessions your family member was not receiving, that is OIG hotline territory. The complaint is not seeking your personal refund. It is contributing to a federal investigation that protects every other patient that provider is currently treating. The most effective OIG complaints, according to the guidance published at oig.hhs.gov, include a narrative explaining the nature, scope, and timeframe of the activity, what was billed, what was actually delivered, the date range, the provider's name, and any supporting documentation you have, such as billing statements, care plans, or Medicare summary notices. Anonymous complaints are accepted. Supporting evidence uploaded through the online form moves faster than complaints filed by mail. And if the complaint results in a successful enforcement action, in some cases involving the False Claims Act, the individual who reported the fraud may be eligible for a portion of the recovered funds. Let me bring this together into the 4 steps that actually get results. Not every situation will use all 4, but knowing all 4 means you never get stuck at a dead end when the first one does not work. Step 1 is to check your Medicare summary notice before anything else. You can access this at mymedicare.gov by logging in and going to the claims section. Every claim filed on your behalf appears there. If a claim was filed for a service you did not receive, the claim date and provider name are your starting point. If a claim amount does not match what you were told at the time of service, the discrepancy is documented in the notice. If a claim was later adjusted and created a credit balance, meaning the amount you were supposed to owe went down after you already paid, the adjusted amount will appear on a later version of the notice. Write down the provider name, the original claim date, the original amount, the adjusted amount, and the difference. That list is your evidence for every step that follows. Step 2 is to match the problem to the right process. This is the step that matters most. Denial of coverage. File an appeal within 60 days of the denial notice date. A billing error or improper charge after coverage was provided. Call the provider's billing department and request a refund in writing. Then file a grievance with your plan if they do not respond within 30 days. A QMB billing violation. Call 1-800-MEDICARE before filing anything because Medicare's direct confirmation of your status often resolves it faster than a written form. An adjusted claim where the credit balance was never returned. Write to the provider, file a grievance, and reference OIG Work Plan OAS-26-06-055. A pattern of suspected fraud, phantom billing, or systematic false claims. File with the OIG Hotline at oig.hhs.gov or 1-800-HHSTIPS. Step 3 is to use your SHIP office before you file anything you are not certain about. SHIP counselors are trained specifically in Medicare appeals, grievances, and complaints. They know which deadline applies to your situation, which form goes to which office, and how to write a complaint specific enough to trigger a response. The call is free and takes about 15 minutes. It can prevent you from filing the wrong thing in the wrong place and burning your 60-day window on a process that was not designed to resolve your type of complaint. That single step saves more time and frustration than almost anything else you could do. Step 4 is to document every contact from the moment you start. Write down the date and time of every call, the full name of every person you spoke with, and what they said. Follow up important phone calls with a brief letter repeating what you were told. This creates a record the other party has implicitly confirmed. Deadlines in Medicare appeals are enforced. Verbal promises are not binding without documentation. A dated, named record of prior contact becomes evidence when a complaint escalates, and it is the practical difference between a complaint that moves and one that stalls at the first level. The forms exist. The deadlines are published. The authority to require refunds and reverse denials is embedded in federal law. The only reason most overcharges stay unchallenged is that nobody sat down and explained which door to knock on. Now you have the map. If you know someone who received an unexpected Medicare bill and gave up on challenging it, please share this with them. The 60-day clock on most appeals runs from the date on the denial notice, not from when they noticed the problem and not from when they finally had time to make a call. Thank you for watching.